آزادی بیان
言论自由
Free speech. We talked before about the difference between norms and laws.
Right.
Could you, you're a lawyer by training.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about the need for the difference between general norms and specific laws?
Yeah, it's a great point. From a jurisprudential perspective, the difference between a norm and a law is only that a law has a threat of force behind it. And what I think is interesting, in areas like this, the norms can be, in some ways, much more powerful than the laws. The laws depend on enforcement. They depend on cases being made. A free speech norm kind of reaches out to everyone and affects behavior on an ongoing basis. In some ways, what's interesting about norms is they're self-executing sometimes. If someone really believes in something, they do it, even whether or not it is enforced by an outside enforcer. If you have an internalized norm of free speech, people act on it. Also, you can have a situation of a decentralized enforcement with norms, which is to say that someone sees something happening, and this is what I think your website is quite closely linked to, is people see things happening, they don't like it, and they rise up against it. Now, it doesn't always have the power of calling in the police, but it can prove very effective on a day-to-day basis.
Can I just follow up on that? Because one of
Sure.
the things you highlight in your book, The Master Switch, is how the American tradition is very strong on controlling public power, weak on controlling private power, and private power is incredibly important online. It seems to me that this power, soft power of norms also applies to the Googles and Facebooks and Twitters, does it not?
I think absolutely. I think in the American tradition, since about the 20th century, when many governmental functions were moved to the private sphere, carriage, telecommunications, mass media, that suddenly private speech control became as important and probably more important than public speech control. This transition happened in the 20th century. Today, the rest of the world is starting to experience what has already been the experience in America, which is to say they have private decision makers having an enormous, almost disproportionate role in determining how free speech is. And when that's the way things are, norms, as you suggested, become all important. The way in which the major owners of the big switches or of the big intermediaries, the big guys in the information world, their attitudes towards free speech really make all the difference. It begins with them. It does not end with them, but it begins with them. And it can be even personal. What personally they feel they should be doing becomes very important. And in order for there to be a sense of a personal responsibility to protect free speech, there needs to be a community of norms that enforce those ideals. So yeah, I think your website is part of that movement, but I think it's been extremely important in the story of some of the big intermediaries today, whether it's Google, Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, that they feel this sort of social pressure to promote free speech.